I don't know if
So
you guys got handed this, but there was this, article by Lawrence Iannacone called "Why Strict Churches Are Strong," that was like everywhere, right in the 90s. It was like the fundamental like journal article that was kind of that it is not aged well, I would say. That that thesis.
But it
Um,
was very useful, right? Very
yeah,
useful to conservatives who
it
had,
was.
their own reasons to pull their churches, their denominations to the right, to really, lock down those gates, build up the walls. And so it was very, very convenient. I ran across that. I mean, it really became conventional wisdom inside those spaces for decades now.
and it just doesn't work. And I think part of the I don't I've wondered about this, and maybe the three of you have an idea about this, is that there was this promise that was implicit in evangelicalism that Jemar just articulated so well, and that it was going to be the religion of the future. There was even that book that was written by, was it Fukuyama, about the how we were moving into a new great awakening, and that it was going to be a different kind of religion, and the evangelical religion was going to be the thing that caused all this new social change. The great, I can't remember what the title of it was. It's back there someplace. But so there was this idea that evangelicalism was going to continue growing, and that it was going to be the carrier of what would become the new American culture. And I think that in effect, it set up conservative evangelicalism for when the decline came. They had no capacity to reflect on the decline, none whatsoever, because it couldn't be their fault, because they had been doing everything right, according to all the experts. So whose fault is it? And so they needed a scapegoat. And in 2016, one of the motivating things when Trump was elected, and evangelicals were having some hard time with thinking about Trump in some places. And it was the Sunday before the election that there was a video that Mike Pence did. And in that video, which has disappeared basically from the internet at this point in time, I think you can find it still in the Wayback Machine. Mike Pence actually promised that if Trump was elected, that evangelical churches would grow again.
Hmm.
And that video was shown in myriad, I have no idea how many, but myriad evangelical churches on the Sunday before elections. And at the time it happened, there was enough in the media that people noticed it and did think that it had an impact on swinging the sort of fence-sitting evangelicals right at the end of that election season. And so they've really tied Trump to the future of evangelicalism. And that's something that I don't know how many people talk about it, but all of your comments today have sort of pointed in that direction. What is the promise Trump holds? And in part, the promise Trump holds is for this idea of an awakened America where their religion is going to be strong, their churches are going to be big, and they're going to be the most powerful religious group in town. And that's what they had wanted to be for a long time, and thought that that was their birthright. And the demographics, I think the psychological hit of these demographics has been enormous in evangelicalism.
Just to build on that, I think that really thinking about church growth models in
Oh, right.
evangelicalism is key. If you spend any time in evangelical pastor circles, right, there's kind of two huge industries: the leadership industry and the church growth industry, and they are overlapping. And we could look to Fuller Seminary as a kind of hub for that, but just the logic of church growth, it just more has to be done on this and understood on really building this culture of evangelicalism. And it's also linked to, I think you alluded to this, Diana, this idea that, if you're obedient, God's going to bless you, and God's going to bless you with numbers. And that worked well for them. If you start in the 1970s up until, like 1990s, early 2000s or so, you could feel really good about yourself. but also like what went into that. It was through homogenous units. So you don't want to have, it's difficult to have interracial churches. Those don't grow very well. People want to be comfortable. This is the Saddleback Sam model, right? So you go for people who have money and stability, because those are the people who are most likely to give to your church and to be able to, to attend church and commit to institutions of this sort. And so that was really the model that was centered in evangelical church growth plans just across the board. And there's this frenetic need to keep building your numbers, right? You're failing as a church if you aren't growing your numbers. One of the things I'm looking into for my next book is going deep back into history to see some of the synergy and deep historical connections between multi-level marketing models and church growth strategies.
Can I make you add shopping, like the big shopping malls into that equation as well?
Great, right. Throw it all in. It's the same thing. And what happens in MLMs? Incredible initial growth. And then very soon you run out of people in the universe. Like literally you run out of people on the face of the earth because that growth strategy cannot possibly be sustained. But you need to implement strong measures of control and discipline in order to keep people in a system when the system is failing them. And I just think that's a model we could apply to a lot of conservative white evangelical spaces right now, as their churches are shrinking, as the demographics are changing, and as that evidence of God's blessing linked to this prosperity teaching is no longer there. And this is like all the ingredients for a reactionary movement.
Yeah.
And I can't help but just think, like, most of those church growth models should have just been called white flight models, because they really depended on this exodus of white people to the suburbs. And I mean, who the hell can't grow a church if you got tons of white people fleeing to the suburbs? All you got to do is stake out a corner lot, right? Because there aren't any institutions out there.
Right.
I used to use this line when I was doing a lot of stuff around church growth, because mainliners got really attracted to that. They saw that it was quote unquote working. And I tried to get them to not pay attention to it. Instead, I kept talking about, can we develop a church depth model? And so it was a hard sell. But one of the quips that I used to say is, you could move to some of these suburbs and heave a brick out of the window and plant a mega church. Yeah. I mean, that's literally how easy it was, especially
Starbucks, right?
Yeah, that's right. Especially in the 1990s and the early aughts. I mean, really, that's all you had to do.